How many of you are seniors in your last semester? Oh my goodness, you put this class off to the very, very end. All right, excellent. Very excited about that. No, I have taught this class. I think this is my 33rd time teaching this class at BYU. I love this class. I think that you'll sort of pick up on that pretty quickly. I love brains. I have a testimony of brains. I will share that testimony with you throughout this semester. But I love teaching seniors, juniors and seniors. I would hate teaching intro psych. Like, I've sat in the back of intro psych classes. I don't know how the instructor doesn't go nuts knowing that everybody is like on Facebook and ESPN.com and whatever freshmen do in that class. It's beyond me. So I'm glad to have seasoned students in my class. Also, it's fun because at the end of the semester, you all don't care anymore because you're graduating, right? Yeah, good for you. All right, syllabus stuff. This is the textbook. It is David Eagleman. You may have seen David Eagleman. He's got like this PBS show about the brain, kind of a celebrity neuroscientist, if there is such a thing. As far as neuroscientists have celebrities, it's this guy. But it's actually a really good book. One of the nice things about this Eagleman guy is that he is a good science communicator. This class is intimidating. I'm guessing there's a reason that many of you have put off taking this class until your very last semester. The name of the class is intimidating. I would much rather change the name of the class to Brain and Behavior. I don't think that would fool anybody, but I think that gets at, that does a better job of communicating what the class is about. So we're going to talk about brains. We will talk about neuroanatomy. We will talk about brain parts. There will be lots of biology in here. If you're not great at biology, it's going to be a little bit difficult. I want to be honest with you. There's going to be lots of memorization of Latin terms and Greek terms for the same stupid structure in the brain. Sorry, that's the neuroanatomists. We just have to deal with it in order to be able to communicate about these things. If you stick with it, then it'll make a whole lot more sense later on. So there will be a lot of memorization up front. Again, transparency. I'm going to be honest with you. There's going to be a lot of effort that you're going to need to put in up front that will pay off later on. Yeah, it's like any other skill that you pick up. Anybody get a musical instrument for Christmas? Anything new? I got a guitar for Christmas. I've been asking for a guitar for years. Like, I think the guitar is cool, right? I'm red-blooded American male. I want to play the guitar. But I've never played. My piano teacher asked my parents to stop making me take piano. Yeah, let that sink in for a minute. As a kid, that was like, yes, success. I no longer have to take piano. It was only years later as an adult that I realized, hey, wait a minute, that's kind of insulting. I am not good at music. I married into a musical family. They want to go Christmas caroling at Christmas time, and they ask me to stand in the back and not make too much noise. So I am very much in the phase of sort of sounding really, really bad, trying to practice. Hopefully this practice is going to pay off later on. So there's an analogy here, that hopefully the neuroanatomy practice that you're going, if you guys want to come around over here, there's lots of seats over here. Hopefully the practice will pay off later on. And there's good neurobiological learning and memory reasons for that to happen. We'll talk about that today. Or not today, throughout the rest of the semester. So, the book, Brain and Behavior by Eagleman and Downer. It is the first edition, so can you get an older edition and be okay with that? No, because it's the only edition that exists, which is good and bad. It's all brand new, so it's not like the book that I have been using for the last 10 years, for the other 33 times that I've taught this class, was the same book that I used as an undergrad when I was in your position. It had just been updated. So it's in the 10th edition. I tried to get another one because why change something that's working? And the textbook publisher said, this is out of print and we're not printing anymore. So thus a new textbook this time. But it's good because there's lots of new stuff in here. All of the sort of new advancements in the field of neuroscience have been incorporated into this book. So it's not like something that's old that they're trying to refresh every couple of years. It's brand new, built from the ground up, essentially. So, lots of reading to do in this class. The readings are listed on the syllabus. The syllabus is on Canvas. We'll talk about that in just a second. Do the reading before the Tuesday class of that week. So I'm going to assume that you have done the reading. I'm not going to talk about everything in the chapter. I'm going to talk about stuff that's related to what's in the chapter, but probably pretty different stuff from what's exactly in the chapter. So the lecture will not be a substitute for the reading. I know often in some psychology classes, often in some classes, let's say not in psychology, in some easy discipline, like, I don't know, physics, you can get away with going to class, listening to the lecture, and not doing the reading. You will not be able to do that in this class. You'll need to keep up on the reading. Do the reading before class meeting on Tuesday. Come prepared with questions to talk about in class on Tuesday. So do the reading before the class in which they're assigned. Do all the readings. Come prepared for a quiz on Thursday. So we will have weekly quizzes starting next week. So no quiz this Thursday, but next Thursday we'll have a quiz every Thursday. The last 15 minutes of class will be devoted to a quiz. This is me. This is my contact information. I'm a little bit obsessive. I'm trying to not check my email first thing in the morning. My wife gets upset with me when I do that. Before I even tell her or my kids good morning, I'm checking my email. I'm a little bit addicted. I might have a problem. This is a New Year's resolution that we're working on, less screen time in my home. But that's my email. That's by far the most reliable way to get a hold of me. That is my cell if you ever want to text me, I guess, or look me up on Venmo and Venmo me money or something. This is my office, Kimball 1053. These hyperlinks are bad. If you want to, I'm trying out this new thing. Let's see. I want to get rid of the link. How do I do that? Yes. Break it. There we go. All right, now you can see it. Okay, I'm trying out this new online scheduling system because in the past I've scheduled office hours at a set time. And those have been great times to get things done because nobody ever comes to the set office hours because they don't work for 72 people's schedules. So what I'm doing instead, and we're going to use this for the first assignment in the class, is I'm using this service called You Can Book Me, where if you go to this link, drkerwin.youcanbook.me, and pick a time. So I've listed all the times that I'm available. So if you want to come and talk to me, sign up for a time and I'll be there. I'll be in my office. I'll make that happen. But otherwise, yeah, so this is going to be the most reliable. If none of those times work and you still want to meet with me, shoot me an email and we'll set something up, okay? Okay, TAs. Do you guys want to stand up and introduce yourselves?
I took Dr. Kerwan's class last semester and really enjoyed it. This is my first semester teaching, so I'm excited to be your TA.
And you are a psych major?
Yes.
Okay. Loriana?
Hi everyone, I'm Loriana Golding. I took Dr. Kerwan's class not last fall, but the fall before that. I used to be a neuroscience major, and then I switched over to psych major that semester actually,
So you know she's smart. Not because she was a neuro major, but because she became a psych major.
Yeah, so yeah, if you need any help or anything, just feel free to reach out to me.
Andy, you're just in time. We're doing TA introductions.
Hi, I'm Anna Jones. I took this class last semester. I'm a psych major. What all will we say about ourselves?
Just that, essentially.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, hello. If you need anything, you can feel free to email me. And sometimes I miss emails, so if I don't respond, you can email me again. ABB, I love it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Are any of you planning on fixed office hours or by appointment? Do you want to think about that?
Doing it like a fixed office hours, and
Okay.
just send out an email.
Okay. Okay, cool. We can talk about that this afternoon. Awesome. One thing that I'm not sure that students realize is that the TAs are actually paid hourly. So don't feel bad about asking for their time because they're getting paid for that. That is literally their job. So bother them, ask them questions, set up appointments with them, come to their office hours. Again, if nobody comes to their office hours, they're getting paid to do their homework, and that just doesn't seem right. So there's one more TA. So I'm teaching 2 sections of this class. I'm teaching an evening section as well. Jordan's going to be attending the evening section. But I think that we're going to divide the grading between these 4. Otherwise, Jordan would have 40 students, and these 3 would have 70 or so students, and that doesn't seem fair also. So, so just know that your paper may not be graded by one of these 3 students, okay? Okay. Canvas. How many of you have used Canvas, have not used Canvas for a class before? That's actually more relevant information. Okay. Canvas is just like Learning Suite, but better. For some things, worse for other things, it turns out. But all of BYU Online is moving to Canvas, and lots of my classes are moving to Canvas. And so we're going to be using Canvas. It's a little more flexible than Learning Suite. From the student's perspective, those of you who've used both, any difference? Really? Yeah.
I have mixed feelings about it. Like you said, I think part of it is just I'm more familiar with Learning Suite because
Yeah.
I've used it for 5 years.
Yeah.
Whereas Canvas I've used for 1 semester for 1 class before.
Yeah.
So I think part of it is just it's like you don't go from a PC to a Mac usually. You usually stick to one of them. I think one thing with is it's harder to print stuff on Canvas.
Oh, okay.
With the syllabus on Learning Suite, a lot of the time you can just click download.
Download as a Word doc or something, yeah.
Syllabus on Canvas does not have that option.
Oh, that's a good point. Maybe I'll make a PDF version and post that as well. Would that be
I would like that.
a request? Okay, I can do that.
I like the schedule layout in Canvas better. Yeah, it's way better.
Okay, cool.
Class communication in Canvas is a lot easier.
Yeah, there's an app. That's actually part of the reason why I wanted to move over, because it's mobile friendly. I can look at assignments. I can know, it sends me push notifications when people turn things in and there's stuff to be graded and stuff like that. So I think it's much more forward thinking than Learning Suite is. In any case, we're committed to it. So we're going to be on Canvas. If you have not set up email notifications from Canvas, I would encourage you to do that so that when we push announcements to Canvas, they come to your email as well, so that you're not having to log into Canvas to see whether we have any announcements or anything like that. The syllabus is already posted on Canvas. The course schedule, there's a page for that. Lecture notes are on they will be on Canvas. Right now, these slides are linked on Canvas. I use Google Slides, which I think is kind of handy. It's super handy for me because I don't have to bring anything to class. I just log in and show you stuff. Also, you can have access to the latest version. So I will post links to the Google Slides as I get them updated with the new textbook. That way, if you want to follow along in class, you want to bring your laptop and follow along in class, you can do that. Contact information, course announcements, we'll try and push things to email as well. Slides, like I said, slides are going to be posted, or links to the slides will be posted on Canvas. I will assume that you will have had a chance to look over the slides before class. I will try really hard not to read slides to you. If you ever catch me doing this, looking at slides instead of looking at you, just throw something at me, get my attention. Okay, let's talk about assignments. So there will be, as I mentioned, there will be weekly quizzes, there will be a midterm and a final, and there will be a series of papers that will build up to this idea, this final research paper. Bless you. So you have all, because of the prereqs for this class, you've all taken a course in, well, multiple courses in experimental design and analysis. So did anybody take I forget the numbers. Take methods from Dr. Gale. A few folks? Okay, so this will sound familiar because I hang out with Dr. Gale and I stole this from him. But we're going to expand on his assignment. So there are multiple assignments. The first assignment is going to be read a research paper, write a review, and an analysis of that research paper in it's 600 to 900 words, right? So it's 2 or 3 pages. Not a huge assignment. Worth 100 points. Report number 2, instead of us picking the paper, you're going to pick the paper. And hopefully it's one of the papers that you're going to be using for your final research paper. So these things should hopefully build on one another. The research paper itself is going to be to pick a news article preferably from a university press release about a neuroscience finding, and analyze the news article in light of what the paper actually found, what the published paper actually found, and the literature in that topic, in that area. So, for example, let me show you an example of this. All right, so this is a paper that we published in, does it have a year on it? It's like 2014 or something like that. Stefania was an undergrad working in my lab. She got an ORCA grant. They've done away with these, but are you guys familiar with ORCAs? Actually, she applied for an ORCA and didn't get it, but I really liked her ORCA idea, and so this is what her ORCA idea was. So this is an undergrad who came up with this experiment. She started collecting data and then graduated and went to grad school and handed it over to me. So I finished the data collection and the data analysis. Michelle Nash was a grad student in the lab who helped me with the data analysis. I wrote up the paper and the results, and then we got it published. Yay! So the idea here was we're interested, in my lab, we're interested in memory. I really want to know how the brain forms and retains long-term declarative memories. So how is it that you can remember what you got for your 6th birthday, but you can't remember what you had for dinner last Wednesday night? Does anybody have that? Dinner last Wednesday? Maybe a few people? Probably not, right? So something that happened less than a week ago, you don't remember, but something that happened decades ago, you've got a crystal clear memory of. Why is that? What's going on in the brain? A recent development in the neuroscience of memory literature is that people who have amnesia, people who have brain damage and difficulty remembering previous events, also, interestingly, have difficulty imagining future events. So if I say, imagine going to a new city that you've never visited before and going to a museum in that city. What's that going to be like? Tell me what that could possibly be like, right? So this is the activity. We stuck people in an MRI scanner and had them do that. We had them remember going to a grocery store. Actually, we got them to send us pictures from their phone of stuff that they've done over the last couple of years. And we showed them pictures of the events, and then we also showed them pictures of things that they had never done before. We had them fill out a questionnaire. Have you ever been to Montreal? Have you ever gone skydiving? And then we showed them pictures of Montreal and skydiving and said, imagine being in this scene. Imagine doing this thing. And what we found is that when you look at the brain activity in fMRI, when somebody is remembering the past and imagining the future, those activations look very, very similar. The same brain regions are activated when you're doing both. Pretty cool, pretty interesting. But there are subtle differences, and that's what our paper was about, is are they exactly the same or are there differences between them? And we found that you can reliably detect differences between them. Yes, in sort of the gross activation, they look similar to one another, but they vary in the details. Okay, so this is what we did, this is what we found, and then we got it published, and because I don't know, I was young and foolish or something like that, I told the university press office about this paper that we had just got accepted. And the university press office sent out a press release that got picked up by a couple of news outlets, and this is the headline. Okay, is this actually what we did? No, this is nowhere near what we did. Neuroscientists watch imagination happening in the brain. Yes, we asked people to imagine things, and yes, we were doing brain imaging. Were we watching what they were imagining, though? No, we can't do that. fMRI technology is not able to do that. Was that the point of the study? Also, no. The point of the study was to compare episodic recall and episodic generation in the same paradigm, right? So your assignment is, this happens all the time. So universities and the news media are really excited to talk about neuroscience, excited to talk about all the cool things that are happening at their university, for example. BYU is the same as every other place. That if there's some new research, they want to publish it, they want people to be excited about it for lots of reasons, to think highly of BYU, to give BYU money, to send their kids to BYU, whatever. Substitute any other university in there for BYU. They're all the same. We're all the same. I'll include myself in that. But the problem is that if you get into the minutiae and the details of the study, people don't care anymore, right? So when my wife is having trouble sleeping, she asks me to tell her about my research. And it works every time. I start talking about the latest research study and she's out like a light, right? This also works at parties, right? If I don't want to talk to somebody anymore, I'll just start getting into the details of my studies. Like, and then they see somebody that they know on the other side of the room, and they'll go and stop talking to me. Not that I ever do that. If I want to do that, I just tell them I'm a psychologist, right? Right, and then they'll stop talking to you because what are you doing? You're you're analyzing them. You're reading their mind, right? Yeah. All right, so is this actually the case? No. So university press releases often will overblow what is actually in the research. They try and stick pretty close. Like if you read the body of the article, it actually sticks pretty close. It's just the headline that's a little bit preposterous. If this gets picked up by news media, then it gets even worse, right? It's like a game of telephone. Every time it gets retold, it gets a little more exciting in the retelling. So, as savvy news consumers and as people who have been educated in research methods and in scientific communication, your job is going to be to find one of these press releases. So a press release about a neuroscience finding, or a news story about a neuroscience finding. Analyze what they say in the news story in light of what's actually in the original paper, and then also a literature review on that topic. Does that make sense? Okay. So in order to help you pick a topic, I would like everybody to sign up for a time in that link, that You Can Book Me link. Come to my office. We'll have a 10-minute conversation. There's a form linked on the schedule, I believe, that it's just a PDF. Download it, fill it out. It's got like your name, your year in school, major, I think, although everybody's a psych major, and then the topic, and then any concerns, like if you are going to be traveling during the week when the midterm is happening, something like that. This is your opportunity to let me know about any of that stuff, okay? And you just need to do this sometime before the midterm, so sometime before, I think it's like February 24th or something like that, end of February. So within the next 6-8 weeks, come to my office, we'll have a chat. If you are having trouble picking a topic to talk about, and if you have a couple of ideas, we can hash through those ideas and we can talk about those ideas, and you can bounce your ideas off of me. So do some Googling around. I think that on Canvas, in the assignment description, I have a link to a blog post that has the 10 top neuroscience findings of 2019. Each of those comes from a university press release. So if you click on any of those are all fair game. So it doesn't have to be from 2019. It doesn't have to be new. It can be from a few years ago, probably not something from the year 2000, right? Because the field has moved on since then. Any questions about this? Yeah.
There was one time I was reading an article actually on Psychology Today, and like about a BYU study, and like the professor that actually did the study, he actually like left several lengthy comments about how they did not represent it correctly. Like if we see stuff like that, like from the researchers commenting on the article, like can we include that if we like?
Oh sure, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's totally fair game. Yeah, excellent. Which researcher was it?
It was one on pornography. It was one like last year or something.
Oh, okay.
Like that. It was really funny to like watch this professor rip the author apart. It was hilarious.
Interesting. Usually the authors will like send it to the researchers and clear it with us and say, is this accurate, right? But apparently not in that case. That's awesome. Okay, does the consultation assignment make sense? Okay, so I'm going to be having a lot of little meetings, so please bear with me if like I get behind on any of those things. Somebody signed up for a time right after this class. Where's Brian? All right, let's just chat right here after class.
Sounds good.
All right, excellent. Okay. All right, let's talk about loss aversion for a second. This is still having to do with the syllabus, but it's a little bit of a tangent. Bear with me. All right, if you give people, we don't do this because we're members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, otherwise known as Mormons. We don't gamble. But if you give people the option of gambling for a gain versus placing a bet and potentially losing that bet, people will go for the gain every time. So we are very averse to losses. And behavioral economists and neuroeconomists, these are all people who went into economics but realized that they really wanted to study psychology, and so they do psychology experiments, but they publish them in economics journals. You can tell them that I said that. They're just jealous of psychologists. But these are psychology studies having to do with money, right? And Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky won a Nobel Prize in economics for having done these things. So what Tversky and Kahneman found is that people they're risk averse for losses. They're risk averse for gains, risk seeking for losses. So they'll play it safe for a gain, they'll gamble when you frame things in terms of a loss. So much that when they've quantified these things, people will sacrifice twice as much to avoid a loss as they will to get a gain. Losses hurt twice as much as gains feel good. So people have actually quantified this. We like to play it safe. We don't like to lose things. If I give you something, and you see this on game shows all the time, where you like start out with an amount that, like on, does anybody ever see, what's the one with Howie Mandel? Deal or No Deal. Yeah. So they give you something at the very beginning, right? You get a briefcase. So that's key to that whole game. You could have $1 million in your briefcase. How much risk are you willing to take? How much are you willing to settle for from the banker when the banker tries and buys that briefcase from you? Has everybody seen this game? All right, you can play it online. Go play Deal or No Deal, and you'll get what I'm talking about. So the key is that you have something in your hand. If they didn't give you anything, then I've got nothing to lose, and so therefore I'm going to gamble. So how does this cash out in terms of brain activity? There's actually a standardized neuropsychological test on risk aversion. It's called the Iowa Gambling Task. And the idea here is that I think that you start out with nothing, and your job is, there are 4 decks of cards, and your job on each trial is to pick one card from each of the decks. Each of the cards has a little bit that you're going to win, and potentially a little bit that you're going to lose. So the net result of, say, this card, for example, is that you are down 50 points. Because we were doing this at BYU, we used points instead of dollars. But in the real Iowa Gambling Task, they do like 50 cents or something like that. They use real money to get people invested in it. So we did a version of this using EEG, which is a brain imaging technique that tracks the electrical activity on the scalp that's generated by the neurons in the brain. So we had people choose from one of these 4 decks, and we tell people some of the decks are good, some of the decks are bad. You need to figure out through trial and error which are good and which are bad. We don't tell them what good or bad means, but people figure it out pretty quickly, because one of the decks, deck A, over 10 cards, you're going to end up 100 points up. The losses are frequent, but they're little losses every time. Oh, sorry. So the gains are the magnitude of 100. The net gain or loss over 10 cards is negative 250. Sorry. So you're going to have frequent losses, frequent little losses, but people figure this out pretty quickly that this is a losing deck, because you're always losing every time you choose deck A. And A is randomly assigned to one of these 4 positions. Does that make sense? Everybody with me? Okay. B, you have big gains of 100 points. You have infrequent large losses. So with B, you choose B, you get 100 points. You have 0 loss. Hey, that's pretty cool. B, 100 points, 0 loss, 100 points, 0 loss, 100 points, 0 loss. You get to like trial 9 or something like that. You gain 100 points, but you lose 1250. Yikes. Right, exactly. So over 10 trials, this one ends up being a loser, but the losses are huge with this deck. Keep that in mind. C and D, the gains are small, but the losses are smaller. such that you end up, they're net winners over time. So they're not very exciting at first. You only get 50 points for this one, but you end up winning eventually over time. So you need to remember what you chose last time. You need to integrate that. You need to update your choosing. There's lots of brain activity going on with this task. What we were interested in is what happens when you get a big win versus a big loss. What does the brain activity look like there? Any guesses? Which is going to be more important? Big losses, exactly right. So big losses are the red lines here. So these are ERPs, event-related potentials. So when we look at the activity right when you get that feedback, if we time the brain activity, that 0 here is right when you see the feedback. You see some sensory processing happening here, and then as soon as you process, what does that mean? You see each of these conditions differentiates from one another. The gains, the big gains and the low gains, that's the blue and the green lines here, they look essentially the same as one another. So if you gain 50 or if you gain 100, doesn't matter. If you lose 1250 versus 100, that matters a lot, right? So the bigger the loss, the more your brain cares about it. Everybody with me? We hate losses. Your brain treats losses very differently than it treats gains. Now, what does this have to do with the syllabus? The point is that you will never lose points in this class. You can only ever gain points in this class. Now, practically, it's exactly the same as all of your other classes. You're going to take a test, you're going to get a score on that test, and that score is going to, the score over multiple assignments is going to determine your grade at the end of the semester, right? So the practical significance is exactly the same. What I want you to do, though, is I want you to change how you think about assignments. Don't think about losing points on exams or on papers. You don't have any points to begin with. You have 0 points right now. Is that true? You're getting any points for being here? No, sorry, you're not getting any points for being here. But come to my office hour, or come to your consultation, and you'll get, 25 points? So you gain points by doing things in this class, right? So for multiple choice quizzes and exams, pretty straightforward. How you gain points on those, just choose the most correct answer. For essay questions and papers, it's a little bit more subjective, right? So the way that you gain points on written responses is by convincing us that you know what you're talking about. So there's a difference between giving us the right answer and giving us a complete answer. So a lot of times you're trained that if you just get the right information on the page, that should be enough for full points. And that if you get the right information, but spell it wrong, then you lose points, right? So you're not going to lose points, but you may not gain full points for an assignment. So, for example, to demonstrate that you have mastered a topic, if the question is something like this, describe the process of visual transduction. So the short answer is visual transduction is the process of converting light energy into neural signals in the eye. That is true and that is correct, but that is not a complete answer. A complete answer might start out something like this. Transduction, sensory transduction, is the process of converting physical energy into neural energy that your brain can use. Transduction occurs in different sensory organs depending on the kind of physical stimulus that's being transduced. For example, light energy is transduced by photoreceptors in the eye, etc. And then describe the process, right? So this is not a complete answer, but this is the beginning of a complete answer, right? So when in doubt, tell us more. Does that make sense? All right, so an adequate answer will get adequate points, which may not be full points on an essay or an exam. Cool? All right. Okay, that said, we don't write perfect questions. With the new textbook, I'm going to be revamping quizzes and exams, so writing new questions that have not been tested out before in those 33 other times that I've taught this class. And so we're going to get it wrong some of the time. If we do get it wrong, if you feel like you chose the correct answer or you gave a correct answer and you want to defend that, we will entertain written challenges to questions. They've got to be timely, so get them back to us. Just email them directly to me. Get them to me within a week of you getting the assignment back. You can't wait till the end of the semester and then hit me with a whole bunch of these. Does that make sense? Don't come up to me after class and say, on this quiz, I wanted blah, 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 because I don't deal well in that situation. I want you to be able to have some formulation of your response. So include things like the slide where I said the opposite of what I said the correct answer was, or the passage in the textbook, the page number, whatever, where you have some defense for your answer. Does that make sense? Okay. Attendance and quizzes. I don't mandate attendance to the class. It's 9:30 in the morning, which, I don't know, for some of you is not early. For others, this is like devastatingly early. My kid is in his second semester at BYU Idaho. He didn't do well in his 8 a.m. class last semester. I told him he wasn't going to do well in his 8 a.m. class last semester, and sure enough. So I get that. You're all sleep deprived. Maybe not right now, but as the semester goes on, yes, you will all be sleep deprived. If you don't come to class, that's okay. I'm not going to be offended by that. But you will not do well on the quizzes if you're not in class. So like I said earlier, there will be a quiz every Thursday. It'll be the last 15 minutes of class. It'll be 10 multiple choice questions and a short answer question. It'll cover the content that we talked about in lecture and that was assigned in the reading for that week. There is a reason for this. This is not to make you come to class, although that's a side benefit. It is not to punish you for not having done the reading. Part of it is to encourage you to do the reading. But the real reason for this is that the more you retrieve information, the more times you practice retrieval, the better your long-term retention of that information. Megan, what is that called?
The recall effect?
Yes, the testing effect, the recall effect. Yeah. Megan took my memory class last semester. Sorry to put you on the spot there. All right. Yeah, so there's this memory retrieval effect, and it's kind of paradoxical. Right? You would think that the more you study the information, the better your retrieval should be, right? Because that's how everybody studies, right? Is you go back and you reread your notes, but not so. The memory literature is pretty convincing, and for a long time has shown that the more you practice retrieving the information, the better your performance. So these quizzes are kind of low stakes. They're 15 points. So cumulatively, they're worth a big chunk of your grade. But each individual quiz is not going to be that devastating. They're not that huge stakes. And there are chances for you to practice retrieving the information. And that is the same information, not the same questions, but the same information will be tested on the midterm and on the final. Speaking of, the midterm exam will be 75 multiple choice questions and 2 essay questions. I will send out the potential essay questions a week in advance. So we'll write 5 potential essay questions. I'll give them all to you. You can form study groups, create a class Google Doc, whatever you want, however you want to study for that. But everybody needs to come to the testing center prepared to answer any of those 5 questions. For the exam itself, we'll choose 2 of the questions, and you'll just write your responses in a blue book. Does the testing center sell blue books?
They do, but
They're more expensive. They're maybe $1 instead of 45 cents.
they're like 50 instead of 40 cents.
Oh, okay. All right. So not hugely more expensive, but more expensive. So the BYU store, formerly known as the bookstore, which formerly sold books, but now just sells Nike apparel apparently. They also still sell these blue books. Has anybody not ever used a blue book before? A few folks. Okay. So it's just a little notebook, essentially, that's got maybe, I don't know, a dozen pages in it. The upshot is that it gives you more room to write than is in that little blank space on the back of a Scantron. You're going to need more space than that. So also it allows us to separate to grade them separately from your Scantron responses. I've got a few of these in my desk that I've had for years. So if anybody wants one, then I'm happy to splurge and spend 45 cents and give you a blue book. Okay, so come prepared to the midterm, ready with a blue book, ready to answer any of those 5 questions. Don't write your answers in the blue book in advance and just tear out the responses that you don't need. This would be the optimal strategy for this. I think that the testing center folks are going to look through your blue book and make sure that it's blank, hopefully. Hopefully you've all signed the honor code as well. I didn't go to BYU as an undergrad, and so the whole testing center concept was just weird to me. Like when I was interviewing here and people were explaining how the testing center actually worked, my first question was, well, what's to prevent the class from getting together and sending one person into the testing center to take the test on the first day and then come back and tell everybody what's on the test? And midway through voicing this question, it hit me. The honor code, that's what prevents people from doing that, obviously. All right, so I'm going to assume that that's the case. Okay, the dates are on the syllabus. It's February 24th. It's Thursday through Monday, whatever that week is. So it runs for a good long time. I'm assuming that Monday is a late day. The testing center won't let me not charge you to take the test on the last day. So if you're going to put it off, I guess that's how the testing center makes its money, is off of procrastination. The final exam will be 100 multiple choice questions. 75 of them will focus on the last half of class. 25 of them will be more cumulative-ish. The final will be in the testing center. The section is big enough on its own to have the final in the testing center. So it'll be the week of finals, I'm pretty sure. I think I scheduled that. I'll have to double check. They'll let me do it still. Okay.
And there's no essay on that one.
There is no essay because you're going to be turning in a 10-page research paper the day before finals start. So we don't want to read your essay questions in addition to the yeah.
On the syllabus, it says that it's in class time, like there are any assigned classes as the final.
Shoot, sorry, I haven't updated that. So normally my sections are too small to have the final, but I've got 2 sections that I can combine and have 110, and they'll let me do that in that case. Yeah, sorry, I just didn't get that updated. Okay. Makeups. If you are traveling for a university excused absence, so this is things like presenting a poster at a conference, representing the university as an athlete. I'll also include interviewing for grad schools. Many of you are seniors and applying for grad schools. Anything like that, let me know, and we'll make arrangements with the TAs for you to take that quiz in advance. Otherwise, we're going to drop your 2 lowest quiz scores. So if you wake up and, like me this morning, just don't feel like getting out of bed and facing another semester or facing the quiz that day, you just want to blow one off, that's fine. We'll just count that as one of the ones that you drop. So we're pretty reasonable people. Come talk to me. Let me know if you have any questions about that.
What happens if you do take all the quizzes? And,
Oh, if you do take all of the quizzes and you score 15 out of 15 on all of them, then we will still drop 2 of them. So your score will be taken out of, I think there are 12 quizzes. It'll be taken out of 10 of them. So if you have taken 8 or all but 2 of them and scored perfectly on all of them, then I would recommend just, I don't know, taking a siesta for the last 2 weeks of class. That's probably not going to be the case, but yeah, if you're doing well, then you can slack off on the last 2. Yeah, we'll always drop 2.
I know you have a class at 4. If we missed this class, can we come to your later class and do the quiz at that time?
Oh yeah, yeah, that'd work. Yeah, in that case, remind me to put section number on the quiz. So if you're going to do that, be sure to say that you're in section 1 so that when we're entering scores, we don't have like some random person that is not in section 4. Yeah. Okay, other questions about quizzes? Any other assignment kind of questions? I think that's all I got. Oh, the makeup philosophy is informed by Alma 3433. I beseech of you that you do not procrastinate the day of your test taking until the end, for after that day in which it is appointed for you to take tests, you'll end up in a line like this. So this doesn't happen so much anymore. This is part of the reason why the testing center won't let smaller sections take their finals in the testing center. This was the last day of finals and winter semester, I forget when, a couple of years ago, probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. So the line, this is the view outside of my office in the Kimball Tower. The line started at the testing center somewhere over there, stretched all the way across in front of the Eyring Science Center, in front of the Kimball Tower, over to in front of the JFSB. It took people hours and hours to get through that line. They were still handing out tests at like 10 p.m. that night. They threaten that they're not going to hand out tests after closing time after like 8 or something like that, but they're actually nice people at the testing center. In spite of all evidence, they are nice people. And they let people take tests like late. Don't do that. So don't put it off to the last day. Yes?
I'm pretty sure it was this class, but in the syllabus it said that you're not writing study guides. And
Correct.
So
I don't know how pliable these people are, like if they're susceptible to bribes or anything like that. Yeah, I'll let you take that up with them. There is a reason that I don't do study guides. Part of it is that it hurts my pride honestly, it hurts my pride when people ask for study guides because I put a lot of effort into creating lectures and choosing a good textbook and sort of highlighting things in the textbook. So I feel like I've already given you a study guide. Everything in here is important. Like I deemed it important enough to talk about in class, it's important. And what study guides do is sort of take all of that and whittle it down to, yeah, he said that's important, but it's not really important. This is what's important. I think that it would be awesome if like the class as a whole put together a Google Doc and shared it with everybody and created your own study guide. I thought about like trying to seed one of those, but I think that would be more effective if it was organic. The TAs, I'm not going to stop them from doing a study guide. So if you ask them nicely, then they may make a study guide for you. Yes?
Do you see the test, or are they just going
Off of previous exams. So here again, this gets at my pride. The study guide is only what's on the test. Yes, they will see the test. They're going to help me write the test. They don't know this yet, but they're going to help me write the test.
So to follow up with that, what's the best way to, as we're just kind of going through all this material, how do we know what to count?
Yeah. So I'm more than happy to answer that question. This is a lot of material, right? And it's a lot of new stuff. It's unlike any of your other psychology classes, right? There are good reading strategies. At the beginning of each of these chapters is study objectives. At the end of this chapter, you will be able to, and then they list those things. Pay attention to those learning objectives. When you read the chapter, don't just read it like a novel. Don't start at the beginning and go to the end and then stop. Look through the chapter first. Look at the pictures. Read the little call-out things. Look for the error on page 5. See if you can spot it. There is an error on page 5. It's the first page of chapter 1. And it's sort of glaring right there. Really makes me mad. Okay. The error is, so it's got a picture of a hippocampus. What is the most important brain region? TAs. The hippocampus, right. So this is my favorite brain structure. This is the part that does learning and memory, long-term declarative memory. I know it pretty well. I've been staring at hippocampi for a long, long time. And it says, the caption, a view of the hippocampal neurons in the human brain. Gloriana, is that a human brain? That is a rat brain. That part not important. So to answer your question, though, do the learning objectives. So thumb through the chapter. Look through the sections. There are 3 or 4 sections in each chapter. Get an idea of how long they are. At the end of each of the sections, stop, close your book, say, what did I just read? See if you can retrieve that information of what you just read. Practice retrieval. The more you practice retrieval, the better you're going to be on tests of retrieval, i.e. quizzes and exams. So there are reading strategies that I would encourage. But first, pay attention to the learning objectives in the chapters. Yeah, that's probably the number one thing that I would say. Yeah.
All right, and then to follow up with like the in-class presentations. You just said like everything that's up there is important. So do we just need to write it all down as we're jumping?
Oh yeah, good question. So how do you take notes in class? Again, there's good research on this. There's a difference between taking notes, like writing down notes, and transcribing on your laptop. So you can type faster than you can write. So I would encourage you to take notes by hand. in class. So somebody was disparaging your notebook. No, that's actually really, research has shown that that is a better way to do it than trying to get down absolutely everything. Because if you're trying to get down absolutely everything, you're not thinking about it as it's coming in. You're not processing that information. Because you write slower, you have to think about it as it's coming in and summarize it as you're writing it. So you're processing that information. You're doing what's called deep semantic encoding as the information is coming in. So yes, take notes and take good notes, but don't try and write down everything. Because everything, that's why I provide the slides. So if you want to go back, like if you get something and if you miss something, make a note to yourself, go back to this slide, or ask Dr. Kerwin later. Yeah. I would not encourage you to try to get absolutely everything down, but I do encourage you to take notes. Yes?
Do the TAs have office hours?
Yes, and they'll post those to Canvas once they have that figured out. They'll probably be just in Psych Central. Yeah. Okay. Oh, late work. So most of the assignments are due at 11:59 p.m. on whatever day, usually on Thursdays. If you turn in your assignment at 12:05, it is not necessarily going to be counted as late. It will be counted as late, but the late penalty is going to be like 1 point. Because ain't nobody going to be reading your papers at midnight on Friday morning. That's just not going to happen. And odds are that we're not going to read it, well, maybe on Friday morning the next day, but probably not. And so the late policy, there's actually a table in the syllabus that has the number of hours late and the maximum points that you can get, that you can expect. There is a formula. If you're interested, I can dig up the formula that I used to create this function because I'm a nerd. But it's sufficient usually for you just to go to the table and figure it out. So if you miss an assignment, you get overwhelmed or whatever, you prioritize and you say, I just can't do that right now, I'm going to turn it in late. You can go to the table and figure out, and do the math and figure out, okay, is it worth turning it in a day late? So that's right here. Yeah, you're still going to get like 90% possible. If you're 2 days late, where we have 48 hours, you're still at like 65%. If you're 3 days or more late, you're still at 50%. You'll still get some points even if you turn it in several weeks after it's due. So I encourage everybody, even if you're super late, it's never too late. You can still get points, and some points is better than no points. So if you're getting to the end of the semester and you're ready to just throw the book in the trash, or the fire, more likely, and just give up on the class, please don't. Come talk to me. We can make arrangements. We can help. Okay? Ooh, electronics. Some of you have laptops. I like laptops in class. The research says that I should not like laptops in class. In your previous psychology classes, they probably talked about the consequence of multitasking with a laptop. What is the consequence of multitasking with a laptop? So if I give you a lecture on, this looks like geology to me. So if I give you a lecture on stratification in geology and then have you take a quiz on that, how are you going to do on that quiz if you were multitasking in class relative to those who are not? Less by about how much? Does anybody know? So there was a study, the subjects who were multitasking, they were told to be like Googling terms related to the topic. So it was still related, but they were doing something else at the same time. They were dividing their attention. They do 11% worse. No, sorry, 10% worse in that case than people who are not multitasking. If you're seated behind somebody who's multitasking, and you can see their computer, versus somebody who's not seated behind somebody who's multitasking, how do the people behind them do? They do worse by 11%. So slightly worse than the people who are multitasking themselves, probably within the margin of error, so let's say they do the same, as if they were multitasking. So you can see most of the folks in this class, when I Googled laptop in classroom, this is what came up in a Google image search. It's pretty good. This must be one of those colleges where they give everybody a laptop. They all look like they're the same model. Most of them have what looks like this slide on their laptop, except her. What's she got? Gmail. Yeah. Is she paying attention? She's also got her phone out. You may notice that. Is she paying attention to stratification in geology? No, she is not. How is she going to do on the quiz? Not very well, yeah. So if you want to do well in the quiz, stay on task, stay on topic. I mentioned 101 classes where everybody is doing something else other than paying attention to the class. This is why I love teaching juniors and seniors, because you have figured out that that is a losing strategy, right? That you have figured out that you need to, if you're going to bring your laptop, you're going to have the slides up, you're going to be doing things. I trust all of you to do the right thing in regards to laptops. So I'm not going to ban laptops. There's some movement in some classes that actually do ban laptops in class. I'm not that much of a draconian. One of the nice things is you all are going to ask some crazy questions in this class. I am not going to know the answer to that question, but we will have access to the oracle, the source of all knowledge, which is Wikipedia, and I can have somebody Google that. And if people have laptops, we can Google that. We can all learn and be edified together. Okay, so I like laptops in class. I do not like cell phones in class. Please don't take out your cell phone in class. A, you don't get any reception down here in the basement of the Marb. B, there's nothing that you're doing on your phone. Well, you may be taking notes on your phone, but that's, I mean, just get out a piece of paper at that point. So for me, when I see somebody's phone out in class, I think, oh no, I've lost them. Am I going too fast? Am I going too slow? Is this too boring? Is this too dense? What's going on? And it totally derails my train of thought. Honestly, it does. So please, no cell phones in class. Laptops are fine. Does that make sense? If you're going to bring a laptop, stay on task, stay on topic so that you're not tanking the grade of the person behind you. We're crammed in here, so there are going to be people who are seeing what you're doing, and it is distracting. You've all been there, right? You've all watched the Facebook flame war that somebody's having in class and been way more interested in that than in whatever is going on up here, right? I can't compete with that. Please don't do it. All right, so here's the grade breakdown. 10 quizzes worth 150 points total, so each quiz is 15 points. We'll drop your lowest 2. So there are 12 quizzes total. We'll take their top score out of the 10. The midterm exam is worth 200 points. What is it? It's 150 for the multiple choice and then 25 for each of the essay questions. Final exam is 100 multiple choice questions, each worth 2 points. The research paper, all together, all of the components of the research paper, 475 points. I think that's right, for a total of just over 1,000 points. Dates to remember. We will not have class on the 18th because BYU magically changes the days of the week every once in a while. So keep that in mind. The midterm, here are the dates for the midterm, the 20th through the 24th of February. It's at the testing center. This doesn't affect us because we don't meet on Friday, but yay, congratulations, you get a spring break. Yay, spring day. You know you are paying for that, by the way. There used to be 2 reading days every semester. Now there's only 1. So you gained a spring break, you lost 2 reading days. Wah, wah. Worth it. All right, does that happen to line up with general conference this year? Does anybody know? No, why would it? That doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't line up with my kids' spring break either. Last day of classes is the 15th. The research paper is due that day. The final is in the testing center the 17th through the 22nd. Any questions? Yes?
So I've had classes before where they have how many points you can get to get a certain grade. Do you have something like that on Canvas? Like 900 points in an A, 850s?
Yes, it's a percentage. So I think on Canvas it says like, is it 92 and above is an A? 93 and above is an A? 93 and above is an A. So 93% of 10, 25, whatever it is. Yeah. I haven't done the math, but it is there. Yeah. Other questions? How are we doing on time? When does this class get out? 10:45? Okay, so we got 15 minutes. Let's talk about brains, shall we? Behavioral neurobiology, what does it mean? What are we studying here? Good luck at the dentist. Okay, we are going to talk about the secrets of life, the universe, and everything. I'm super biased here, but I happen to think this is the most important class that you're going to take at BYU. Actually, no, I think cognition is probably the most important class you're going to take at BYU. You should all take 375. It's a great class. And I'm only kind of teaching it this semester. We are going to talk about things that matter, though. We are going to talk about how do we get mental events from a 3-pound lump of tissue that you're carrying around in your head. So this is my brain. This is a model of my brain. So I 3D printed this a little while ago, so you can see all of my sulci, all of my gyri. I'm actually going to pass that around if you want to take a good, not very close look at it, please. Right, exactly. Yeah. So this is I know, right? This is life size, but it is not the same weight. Your brain weighs about 3 pounds. It is the consistency of Jell-O, essentially, sort of firm tapioca kind of consistency. If you put it on, I'll show you a video of a brain that was recently extracted from a cadaver a little bit later on, in a couple of weeks, actually, when we talk about neuroanatomy. If you take a brain and just put it on the table, it'll sort of squish out. It'll lose its shape. It's not strong enough, it's not firm enough to sort of hold its shape. So you've got fluid surrounding it that helps it maintain its shape. You've got this nice cranium around it that helps it maintain its shape. We've been studying brains for centuries, but we still don't have a good answer to this question. How do you get mental events from that 3-pound lump of gelatinous tissue you're carrying around in your head? How does that work? How are our sensations, our perceptions, our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, how is that all related to that lump of tissue that you're carrying around? This is what's known in philosophy as the mind-body problem. We will tackle the mind-body problem in here. We will not get any closer than Descartes did to answering this question. Well, actually, we'll get a lot closer than Descartes. Descartes was wrong. But he gave us some interesting things, 500 years ago, 400 years ago. So we'll talk about this mind-body problem. How do we perceive the world? How do you go from light, electromagnetic radiation out there in the world to a visual perception of the world? How does that work? How do we move? How do you take the intention of, I want to pick up the cup, and translate that to, I need to move this group of muscles this much and flex these muscles and then squeeze this hard in order to pick up the cup and take a drink? If you think about it, all of the stuff that goes into a simple motion like picking up a cup is computationally hugely intense. How do we do that? And we do that without even thinking about it. How does that happen? What happens when the brain is damaged? We'll talk a lot about brain damage in this class. We'll talk about different conditions that lead to very specific deficits. We'll talk about neuropsychological cases. We'll talk about neuropsychological tests. Why is it that if you take out a very specific chunk, like the hippocampus, for example, you have very specific deficits in memory, but not all memories? You have different types of memories, as it turns out. We'll talk a lot about that. Actually, that's this last point. This is me. How does the brain form and retain long-term declarative memories? I study memory. We're going to spend more than a week on this topic. I know that in advance. I know this about myself, that it's going to take me more than 2 class periods to get through everything I have to say about memory. Those of you who took my memory class, you know that I can go on for at least an entire semester talking about memory and not run out of things to say. Okay, so this is where's my, shoot. There used to be a 3D rotating brain here, but we'll do the actual 3D brain for you as a substitute for that. So my research, I combine a couple of different research methodologies, several actually. So, there it is. Just took a minute to load. All right, so part of what I do is I'm the director of the MRI research facility down the hill in the McDonald building. We will take a field trip to the MRI facility later on this semester. Anybody interested in getting their brain scanned? All right, so we'll do a lottery. We'll draw names out of a hat to pick subjects to scan. So we'll scan your classmates while they're in the MRI scanner doing a perception task. And you'll be able to see the brain activity in your classmate's brain while they're in the MRI scanner. It's really cool. It's a really cool demo. So that's part of what I do, is I stick people in the MRI scanner, I give them memory tests, I give them perceptual tests, and then we analyze their brain activity data to see how does the brain do what it does. That's a big chunk of what I do. Another chunk of what I do is I work with folks like him. Does anybody happen to know who that guy is? He's famous. You've heard of him before. That's patient HM. Henry Molaison. Does anybody know what happened to HM? Why is he famous? Anna? Right, yeah. So he had epilepsy, was having major seizures, went to a neurosurgeon in the 1950s, and the neurosurgeon said, I can fix that for you. We've been doing this experimental surgery with schizophrenic patients, and I think it'll work for your epilepsy, because schizophrenia, epilepsy, potato, potato, right? Same diff. And so HM consented, and it actually worked. That by taking out the anterior 2/3 of his hippocampus and medial temporal lobes, they were able to control his seizures after that. I think that that is just complete serendipity, that the focus of the seizures, the tissue that was causing the seizures, happened to be in the hippocampus, but it did work. What was the side effect? Anna, what was the side effect?
Create new memories.
Right, for the rest of his life. So surgery happened in about 1953. HM passed away in 2008. So for about 55 years, he was unable to form any new long-term memories. Long-term declarative memories, memories for facts and events. He was able to learn new skills, though. And that's actually really interesting. You could do classical conditioning with him. You could teach him how to swing a golf club. You could teach him new things, but he couldn't remember having met you before. He couldn't remember the fact that he was taking golf lessons, things like that. So really, really interesting case. So these amnesic patients, we don't do this kind of surgery anymore, bilateral medial temporal lobectomies. They will do unilateral hippocampectomies, where they'll take out the hippocampus on one side, but they'll leave the other side because you've got some symmetry there, and the other hippocampus can compensate most of the time. But these cases are really interesting. Cases of Alzheimer's, for example, are really interesting, probably because, well, they're becoming more interesting as our population is aging. And we'll talk about aging, we'll talk about memory and dementias later on. You probably know somebody who has dementia or had dementia and died from it. This is another amnesic case that we'll talk about quite a lot. This guy, patient EP, had viral encephalitis. So not surgery to take out his medial temporal lobes, but a viral infection infected this part of his brain. So normally, this is the hippocampus here. It looks sort of like a cinnamon roll, this sort of spiral structure here. EP had none of that. In fact, EP had less hippocampus than HM did. And I actually got to work with EP when I was a postdoc in San Diego. I met him probably several times. Every time he met me, he introduced himself as if he was meeting me for the first time, because for him, he was meeting me for the first time every single time he met me. The researchers that I worked with there, my primary investigator, my PI, had met him probably hundreds of times. EP had no recollection of ever having met Dr. Squire before. It's really fascinating cases. Okay, this is the other aspect of what I do. This is our scanner down at the MRI facility. Usually we don't have this sort of mood lighting going on. This was a BYU photo shoot. All right, how much time have we got? We got 5 minutes. Okay, we are going to do a quick pretest. All right, don't freak out, it's easy. All right, how many of you have recently taken a biology course? In college, taken a biology course, freshman biology? All right, how many of you loved that biology class? No, I'm a psych major, obviously I didn't. Okay, maybe. We've already asked that question. You've already taken research methods. How many love the testing center? Hate the testing center? Have church in the testing center? This does happen, and I'm not sure if you go to take a test and feel the spirit because that's where you take the sacrament, or you go to take the sacrament and feel anxious because that's where you take tests. Probably the anxiety. Fear usually wins. We've talked about studying for exams by rereading notes. It's not the best way. All right, here's our pretest. True or false? You only use 10% of your brain. How many of you have heard this before, that you only use 10% of your brain? How many of you have, I'm not going to ask if you believe this. What do you think, true or false? False. False, yeah, it's not true. Really easy to demolish this idea. So let's see. If somebody tells you, oh, you're taking a neuroscience class, is it true that we only use 10% of our brains? You could say, yes, which 90% of your brain can I take out? People are going to back off of that really, really quickly, right? Because we see in cases of brain damage, HM, for example, if he was only using 10% of his brain, that if we take out a small chunk, take out his hippocampus, Volume-wise, that's like, I don't know, 1 or 2% of your brain. So not that big. The other 90% should have been able to compensate for it, right? But we take out that little chunk, and he has devastating effects. We see this all the time in traumatic brain injury. You have or stroke or any other brain injury, where you have a very small lesion and you have very devastating effects, usually within a single modality, right? So the cases of brain damage disprove this. Another way to disprove this is by taking a look at babies. Does anybody have kids? When you have kids, what is the hardest part of getting a kid into the world, through the womb, through the birth canal into the world? What's the biggest part of a baby? The head, right. Babies' head circumference has been killing mothers and babies for time immemorial, for the entire history of our species. It's only recently that we've been able to reliably do cesarean sections and things like that. So my head, unfortunately for my wife, is in like the 95th percentile in terms of circumference. Like I have a big noggin. That's not to flex or anything like that. It's just, it's genetics. I have a big noggin. And it is genetic because my son, my firstborn, also has a big noggin. My poor wife was in labor with him for hours and hours, and his stupid big head was not going anywhere. And so they had to do an emergency C-section with her in order to get his big head into the world. I love my kid. And unfortunately, I have passed my big noggin on to him. Yeah, my wife didn't, ladies, ask potential suitors what their head circumference was, and B, how large they were as a baby. I was, in the 10-pound range when I was a baby. My son, 10 pounds, 1 ounce. Yeah, okay. So she, as soon as she learned this about me, she immediately regretted it because she was pregnant with our son at the time. Okay, so big heads have evolutionary costs is the point here. So if it were the case that we were not using 90% of our brain tissue, then evolution would have selected for smaller heads a long, long time ago. So either we should have heads that are reduced by 90% in volume, like this guy here, or we're using 100% of our brain. All right, so you all passed the first question on the pretest. We do, in fact, use 100% of our brain. We're not using it all the time, although there is a low level of baseline activity in all of your neurons. So it's not true, but where does it come from? Well, we don't know. We don't actually know where this 10% thing comes from. It probably sticks around because how hopeful is that, right? How aspirational is that I'm only using 10% of my brain, so it's okay that I'm watching Netflix instead of studying, because I could, learn French and use the other 90%, but I'm only using 10%.
So just out of curiosity, is there an estimate of how much of your brain is actively being used at any given time?
100%. Yeah, all of your neurons are active. It's use it or lose it. If neurons are not actively firing, then they get paired back. So they have a baseline firing rate of maybe 1 to 2 hertz. So they're firing once or twice a second. But there's blood flowing, there's oxygen consumption. Your brain is constantly active. Even when you're asleep, brain activity is actually really, really interesting when you're asleep. So you're always using 100% of your brain. You use more or less, so those firing rates go up and down, and we'll talk a lot about that, actually, through this class, but it's all active all the time. Okay, we're out of time. So hang on to those questions, maybe write them down, make a note of them. We'll talk about them on Thursday. Thanks, everybody.